Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadankitam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalaam Shri Gurun Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijanasahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Lalita Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Sri Radhe Vrindeshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisheshai Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarini. Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna and welcome Matajis and Prabhujis to the online Bhagavad Gita classes from ISKCON Mangalore. So yesterday we covered the 12th chapter, right? So we finished the 12th chapter. So there ends the Bhakti Yoga, yeah. So, and then today we'll start Jnana Yoga, which is nothing but from chapter 13 onwards, yeah. So before I start the 13th chapter, right? So in 12th chapter, so we saw some key information yesterday. So we'll just do a quick recap for 1 or 2 minutes and then move on. Yeah. So anyone remembers what we actually went through yesterday? And then what are the 4 ways, if someone can tell the stages of devotion we spoke yesterday, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. So we talked about Ananya Bhakti
Yeah.
and Sadhana Bhakti,
Yes.
Nishkam Karma Yoga,
Yeah.
and Sakam Karma Yoga. If anyone, it was sequentially. I mean, the
Yeah.
top is Ananya Bhakti. I can do it. I can do Sadhana Bhakti. If I can do that, even I can go for Nishkam Karma, and below it is Sakam Karma Yoga. And after that, I think it was told about Jnana and
Yeah. It's knowing about the knowledge
meditation.
and then meditation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
So
then there are certain later on certain qualities. I
yeah.
think a lot of number of qualities. I have not counted those numbers, but lot of qualities were talked about which the Lord likes on the devotee.
Yeah. So which are dear to the Lord. Okay. So that was devotional chapter. So with that, right? So the Karma Yoga we finished in first 6 chapters, right? And then the next 6 chapters were Bhakti Yoga, yeah. And so remember in the initial classes we spoke about the jewel box example, right? So wherein the lower lid was Karma Yoga, and then the jewel was the Bhakti Yoga, and then the casing on top of that particular jewel box, as an analogy, is nothing but Jnana Yoga. Yeah. So in number of in all the chapters, right, you might have seen that Lord Krishna in every chapter, right, he has touch based about devotional service. Yeah. If we see until 11th chapter, right, so in 1 or 2 verses in every chapter, right, he actually gives all the information, like say for example in Ashtanga Yoga, right, so he gives all the information about Ashtanga Yoga, and at the end he concludes that, say, devotional serve is the best and Bhakti Yoga is the best, right? So similarly, after showing the Vishwarupa also at the end, he says that devotion, right? So everywhere it's only devotion. So even now, right? Say, why jnana is required? So why are we going through this phase, right? So even a jnana yoga, right? So with jnana, right? So we'll get the knowledge which is required to do bhakti. Yeah. So again, this is for the improvement of bhakti only. Okay. So these details we'll see through in today's section, and then this is little bit technical chapter. Yeah. So it takes time, but yeah. So if you read once and twice, right, so you'll understand this chapter. So this is chapter 13. Yeah. Nature, enjoy, and consciousness. Again, this question starts, this chapter starts with the question from Arjuna. Yeah. But before that, we will see the sections of Bhagavad Gita and all. Right? So, yeah. Yeah. So this is what was covered in this is in the 12th chapter, right? We saw personalism and impersonalism, progressive stages, which we discussed, and the qualities. This was the main essence of devotional service, though a small chapter with 20 words, right? But very important. Yeah, it has a lot of information. So this is today's chapter. So this is the section-wise breakup of chapter 13. So what are we going to discuss? Yeah. So it begins with Arjuna's question. Yeah, and then Lord answers them. Yeah, in different sections he answers different things. Yeah, so we'll go through them. Yeah, so what is first they'll touch Kshetra and Kshetrajna, yeah, and then it will be Jnanam, and it will the sequence goes on. Yeah, Name and Prakriti Purusha. So we'll go through them. So this is what I was talking initially, right? So basically, Bhagavad Gita is divided into three chapters, right? So this is Karma Yoga, this is Bhakti Yoga, and this is Jnana. Okay. So and then why do we need Jnana? For actually doing Bhakti Yoga itself. Yeah. So we'll get the knowledge, the philosophy. Yeah. So to do Bhakti in a better way. Yeah. So again, actions performed to please to Lord is Bhakti Yoga. Yeah, perfection of Jnana is Bhakti Yoga. So all in all, right, the whole Bhagavad Gita is about Bhakti only. Okay. So if you ask the consolidated thing, right? So the whole 18 chapters is about Bhakti only. Okay. But yeah, so the things are divided in such a way that we understand. Yeah. Say even it's more like a sandwich. Yeah? So in this chapter, right, if bhakti is culmination, then why is jnana presented at the last six chapters? So this is a question which actually everyone has in, right? So if you look in, right, so the same thing has been addressed here. Like first six chapters discuss how to achieve bhakti through work. Yeah. So the work which we do in, right. So that is being discussed in first six chapters, and the last six chapters how to achieve this through knowledge. Yeah. So because there are so many things which we'll have to know through knowledge. Yeah. So the do's and don'ts. Yeah. So basically, and so there even in the coming chapters also, right? So we'll see the different kinds of modes, yeah, and then how um, the modes affect the living entities. Yeah. And then basically this is more of how one deals, right? So it's about more of character. So Krishna actually stresses on the character part also. So it's like building the character, the right set of mood and the character to do bhakti. So we'll learn those all things in the next 6 chapters. Yeah. So 12th chapter explained how personally he delivers. Yeah, this was that 12.7, right? That Sagarat Mrityu Samsara. So he comes and lifts. So that is the essence of this particular line. And Jnana has its own use in assisting our detachment from Maya and our attachment to Krishna. Yeah. And so this 6 chapters provide us the philosophical knowledge necessary to extract oneself from the material world. So why do we need this? So this will actually move us. So there are a lot of things which we'll be seeing in and around, right? So where we can disconnect and connect to the Lord. Yeah. Hence this is required. Okay. So this is the reason why we are reading Jnana Yoga. Yeah. So after Bhakti Yoga, it's Jnana Yoga. Yeah. So now he'll so in this chapter, right? The first question is from Arjuna. Yeah. So he'll ask, in and the Lord replies also. Yeah. So in this, Arjuna asks, "Oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti. Prakriti is nature. Yeah. Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field. Yeah. Kshetra, Kshetrajna, end of knowledge. Yeah. And the end of knowledge. So he asks about 6 things here. Yeah. Gnayam and Jnanam. So all these things he's asking here. Okay. And the whole chapter is nothing but the description of all is the answer to these 6 questions. Yeah. Wherein say Krishna will actually touch base about our body. Yeah. So what is Kshetra? Yeah. In this we'll get to know the field of activities. Okay. The field of activities as the body, and then what is the activity of the soul. Yeah. Who is the knower of the field, and the super soul. Yeah. So he is the knower of all the fields. Yeah. And knowledge. Okay. So all these things we'll get to know. So basically Prakriti is material nature, Purusha is the enjoyer of matter. Yeah. And Kshetra is the field in which one can act. So the field. Okay. And Kshetrajna is the entity which experiences the field of action. Yeah. So similarly, Jnana is the knowledge process of acquiring knowledge, and name object of knowledge. So all these things will cover one after the other. But in the first verse, right, in the 3.2, right, the Lord actually tells about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Okay. So Kshetra is called the body. Okay. So is nothing but the field. Yeah? So and Kshetrajna is one who knows this. One who knows this body is called the knower. So one who knows the body. So knower of the field is Kshetrajna. Okay. So basically this is the soul. Okay. So here the body of the Kshetrajna, right? So the conditioned soul, right? So basically it is entrapped, right? So we are in this material world, right? So we are entrapped in this material existence, and then the nature is that to enjoy this material energy, right? So depending upon that, we have got this body. So we have got our body, right? So that is called Kshetrajna, Kshetra. Okay. This body is called Kshetra. So wherein we can act, right? So whatever we want to say enjoy in this material world, right? So we do with this body. Yeah. So this is so our remedies until this body. Yeah? And so in this, right, and then this body is actually changing, right? So in the second chapter itself, we know that it moves, right, from childhood to old age, right? And so body is constantly changing, right? So we took the example of the tricycle, bicycle, yeah. So but the soul is always there, yeah. So soul is kshetrajna, yeah. And so one thing is, one example we can take is, say like a tailor, right? So, so his field, right? So the tailor's field is what? Tailoring, right? So he actually looks into different types of cloths and then makes them in different sizes, shapes, right? So all throughout his life, he'll be using his scissors and then his measuring tapes, right? And that is his field of field, right? So field of activity. So wherein he does, so all throughout of the life, right? He'll make different shapes, right? So like he'll stitch different ways, right? So that is his field, yeah. Okay. So whatever I spoke, right? So let's actually see in an text format, so which will help you understand. So Prakriti is nothing but material nature. Okay. Purusha is enjoyer of Prakriti. So here we'll see two Purushas. Okay. Small p and capital P. So that will go when we are there in the next from 20th verse, right? So that may be in the next class we'll see. Okay. But Kshetra is the body. So this we spoke, right? This is nothing but Shariram. Yeah. Kshetrajna, observer in the body. Okay. First understand it as soul and then we'll know about the super soul. So there are both the things which actually are there, right? So in the body, Kshetrajna, say one is there are two birds, right? On a tree. Similarly, we have one bird, one is the furtive bird, right? So which eats the fruit of the tree, and there is another bird which is witnessing what we are doing. So that's the super soul. Yeah. So both know, okay, both know about the bodily activities. Yeah. But the only difference is soul only knows of this body where it is there. Yeah. So in the current body, it knows the temporary thing. Yeah. But the super soul knows everything, not only of this body, but of all the bodies. Yeah. So, and the super soul knows the past, present, and future also. Yeah. And then Jnanam. So this is knowledge. Understand Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So to understand this, right? So we need the knowledge. That is nothing but Jnanam. Yeah. And name is the ultimate goal, which is not, which is nothing but the goal of knowledge or Paramatma. Okay. So just remember this. Okay. For now, right, we'll be dealing in today's majority of the class we'll be dealing with these three things only. Yeah, these things. Prakriti and Purusha we are not going to touch today, so it will be later on. Yeah. So Kshetra is body, Kshetrajna is the observer of the body. Yeah, this is the field. This is the knower of the field. It is the understanding. And anyhow, so this is an advanced thing we'll get to know. Okay. And yeah, so this is basically just a representation. Yeah. So we'll go through the Kshetra, Kshetrajna. Okay. So Kshetra, this is the body. So for whom? Yeah. So it is for the conditioned soul, right? Who gets body as the field of activity is the conditioned soul. Okay. And then why does he need? Because soul is entrapped in material existence. So as I said, right, the soul actually wants to dominate, or say it wants to enjoy the material energy. Hence, it has been given a place. Yeah. And the next thing is, say, okay, criteria to decide which body. So this depends upon our desires. Okay. So according to the capacity to dominate material energy, and according to one's capacity to enjoy sense gratification. So depending upon that, so these are our desires, right? So we saw this from chapter 8, right? So whatever desires are left out, right, in our past life, right? So at the time of quitting the body, so the Prakriti gives us, we get an arrangement, right, for the next life. So like somebody eats all nasty things, right? So his desire is to eat all nasty things. So he may become a pig. Yeah. So similarly, so whatever our desires are, right? So in the same way, so we'll be getting the body in the next life. Yeah. If someone is attached to something, or say in Tamaguna, we'll get a lower body, right? So in the, even it's possible that we may get an animal life, right? Yeah. So in that way. And Kshetrajna, say knower of the field. This is how to understand the difference between the body and the knower of the body. Yeah. This is nothing but Kshetrajna. Okay. So this is supreme devotional service. I think this is more or less the same thing which we covered in the introduction, right? So about the first 6 chapters. Yeah. So, but in this, he has given about the knowledge. Yeah. So, first 6 chapter actually discusses the knower of the body, right, and the position by which he can understand the supreme Lord. So we know, we in the first 6 chapters we know that, and the middle we know that the supreme personality of Godhead and the relationship between soul and super soul. Yeah, with regards to devotional service. Yeah. And the last 6 chapters will explain how the living entities comes in contact with the material nature. So now we'll see the details of our body. So what is it being made up of? Yeah? The elements which are made. So the all these things are going to come. Yeah. So in the next verse, right, in the third verse, the Lord will explain about Kshetrajna. Yeah. So the knower, basically. So the he'll now introduce the second knower. Okay. Yeah. Answers 3, 4, 5. We'll see through this. So he says, Ocean of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all the bodies. And to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So he says that Kshetrajnam chapimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetrajnyor jnanam yattaj jnanam matam mama. Right. So he says that chapi, right? Chapimam vidhi. Kshetrajna chapimam vidhi, in the sense. So he, so it's not only that the knower of the field, right? So the knower of the field is not only soul. Yeah? He's saying that, see, the knower of the field is the super soul as well. So there are two, right? So if you see in this picture, right, say everywhere, so we have two, right? So if you see everywhere we have soul and super soul, right? So this is Paramatma is there, and then this is soul. So everywhere we have us, yeah. And so in this verse, right? So as I said, right, Kshetrajna, so the knower of the Chapi. So also Apimam. So he says that I am also there. Yeah. So in the sense, in every body, right, there is soul and super soul. Yeah. Okay. And then in here, the Lord says that I am the knower of all the fields of activities in every individual's body. Yeah? And then say we are, say the individual might be knowing he is the knower of his own field of his body, right? But if you see, right, this Paramatma is present everywhere. So he is knower of everything. Yeah? And so here an example is also being given of the field, right? So we just saw a field, right? So like the farmer might be like if there is a king, right? So and the best thing is the king. The king actually gives one acre of land to all the farmers, right? So the farmer will be knowing about his own 1 acre of land which he owns, right? So whatever the king has given for him, right? So he might be knowing about his field, the vegetation he has, right? And the type of crop he has, and all those details he has. But the king has the knowledge of all the fields because he has distributed all those acres, right? And then he knows. So in which field what is going on. Yeah. So the king here is the super soul and the farmer is the soul. Okay. So this is an example which has been given here. Yeah. So what is jnana? To study the subject matter of the field of activity and the knower of the field. Okay. So the field of activity is the body, yeah, and so the knower of the body is Kshetrajna, which is nothing but soul and super soul. Right? So how Krishna is the knower? Because super soul is the expansion, right? So we know. So as Paramatma, he is there. He is present in every body, right? So there is also a second knower of all the fields, which is nothing but super soul. Okay, and so the difference between soul and super soul is our thing is limited. Yeah? It is limited to our body, but super soul knows everything. Yeah, and then we'll see a chart also, right? So wherein we have the whole differences between the soul and super soul. Okay. So living entities are known as Jivatmas, yeah, and then God is the maintainer, so is known as Paramatma. So we are Anu, and then is Vibhu, right? And we are only cognizant of one's own body, right? So he is cognizant of everyone's and everything. So starting from the smallest atom to the bigger planets, to the Brahma, everything he knows. Soul is secondary proprietary of one's body, right? So this is the example which I gave in, right? So wherein the citizen knows about his piece of land, right? Whereas the king is the proprietor of all the lands. Yeah. So that is the example. Yeah. And soul is the secondary controller of senses. Yeah. So analogy is nothing but citizens are the secondary controllers of his activities. So king is the original controller. Okay. And this is fallible, this is infallible. So innumerable living entities, though super soul is in the heart of every living entity and within every atom, still there is only one super soul. Yeah. So this is basically difference between soul and super soul. So now we'll go into the next section, so wherein the Lord will now brief. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity. Okay, he'll talk about the field of activity, how it is constituted, what its changes are, yeah? And when it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are. So now there will be a lot of details which will be discussed here on about the body, right? So we'll go through the details. Okay, so about the body, right? So what it is made up of, yeah. So and before that, right? So actually, the Lord says that all this information. So He actually refers Shastra even. So to answer these questions, right? He says that He Himself refers to Shastra, yeah? So which is the ideal way to do. In the next verse, he'll say that. Yeah? So Rishibir Bahuda Geetam. Yeah? So Chandobar Vividai Pratak. So here, right? So these are nothing but he says that these are from these all details are there in our Shastras, and then he's quoting the Shastra, which is nothing but the Vedanta Sutra. He says that Brahma Sutra Padesh Cheva Hetamad Adbhir Vinishyate. So the knowledge of the field of activities and knower of activities is described by various sages. So he's referring that various sages have described this information. Yeah, so all these information are there. Yeah, and then he quotes here in the Vedanta Sutra. So with all reasoning as its cause. Yeah. So here he actually takes Parashara Muni, who is nothing but father of Vyasadeva. Yeah. So he in his writings has written all these things. Yeah. Okay. So Lord Krishna cites the authority. So from where he's quoting all this from Shastra. So knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragra, its cause and effects is discussed in Vedic literature, especially by Srila Vyasadeva in Vedanta Sutra. So again, so this is our stuff, right? So how do we gain knowledge or how do we progress in devotional service? Is nothing but Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. This is the base for anything, right? So if you want to move ahead, right, or if you want to progress in devotional service, this is the only way. So we'll have to listen from a guru, yeah, and then read Shastra, and then get the Vedic knowledge by the sages. Okay, so here, right, how to identify? See, Lord Krishna cites the authorities. How to identify learned scholars and standard authorities? Yeah, they always give evidences from past authorities. So that is how you can actually understand, okay, about, right, how the learned scholars, right? And besides Krishna himself, Vyasadeva is a great sage who explains this concept of duality perfectly in Vedanta Sutra. Yeah. So actually, you look, his father is Parashara Muni. So he's a great sage, right? He himself has written this uh, in his book, right? He has said that aham tvam cha tathanye. So he says that you, I, and all living entities are transcendental. So we are spiritual, although in material bodies. And then we have fallen because of our karma. So it is due to all our ignorance. Yeah. Yeah, and then if you see, right, Chandumi refers to various Vedic literatures, right, like Taittiriya Upanishad, which is nothing but a branch of Yajurveda. Many great sages have explained this. Parasara is the principal among them. Yeah? So he is quoting, and now Lord will actually explain. And then here, right, say he'll explain in the purport, right, how the Brahman is realized, right? So it is basically in the 5 different ways, right? So even that is being discussed, which is known as Brahma Pucham. right? So in this, there are 5 stages. Yeah, say Annamaya, Pranamaya, yeah, Jnanamaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya. Okay. So Annamaya is nothing but food is the supreme object. So this is the very beginning stage, say, wherein so one is satisfied if he gets food. Yeah. And then as he moves ahead, right? So then he realizes the living symptoms of life. Yeah. So one seeks to preserve his life. So he'll get into the next life. And after that, right, he goes to Jnanamaya. So where the point of feeling and willing, right? So thinking, feeling, and willing will come. So this is where one deals with mind, intelligence, and emotions, right? These things kick in here, yeah. And the next stage is Vijnanamaya. Yeah. So Vijnanamaya is nothing but realization in which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished. Okay. And the last stage is Anandamaya, as the name suggests, right? It is full of bliss. Yeah. So this is the supreme stage. Yeah. So here one realizes the distinction between the self and the supreme lord, right? And then there is a bhav, a relationship which is being created. Yeah? So that is Anandamaya. So that is at a very higher stage. Yeah? So if you look right out of these three, right, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya, so these are like Kshetrajna. Yeah? So these are the next level. Yeah? And rest all, right, say are at the Kshetra, at the bodily thing. Yeah. So Anandamaya, Pranamaya, and all those things. Yeah? So this is what Annamaya is food and the consciousness of young child. Yeah. So this is more or less the same thing which is I spoke. Distinction between self and super self. So these two are at advanced level. Yeah? And then so these are beginning, and then this is the intermediate stage. Yeah. So this is the Brahman realization. Okay. And then now the Lord actually speaks about what this Kshetra is made up of. Yeah? The, it is made up of the 5 great elements. Yeah? So we know, right? The 5 great elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Yeah? And false ego, intelligence. So this is nothing but man, buddhi, ahankar, we call it, right? So mind, intelligence, and false ego. So so he considers mind separately. This is on top of it, right? And then the 5 sense objects, right? 5 sense objects are what? Eyes, ears, nose, right? Tongue and skin. Yeah, eyes, nose, ears, tongue, and skin. Yeah. And then so these are next is what? Yeah, the 5 sense objects, and then desire, hatred, happiness. The aggregate is the life symptoms, and the conviction. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. So basically there are 24 elements, okay, so which the kshetra is basically made of. Okay. Or say if you look, right, so these are 5 elements. Yeah. So these are 5 major elements, right? So like earth, water, fire, right, ether. And then here eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin are 5 jnanendriyas. Yeah? And the other working senses, right? The working senses are what? Hands, legs, voice, right? And this is anus and genitals, yeah, and tanmatras. So this is nothing but rupa, shabda, gandha, rasa, and sparsha, right? Form, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So all these things are 20. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So these are 20 items. And then apart from this, this is man, buddhi, karya. So all these constitute 24 elements. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 20. Consciousness, contaminated consciousness. Okay, chitta. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it becomes 24 elements. So this is what the Kshetrajna is made up of. Yeah. This is the overall theme. Okay, so whatever we have actually spoken, right? So you can actually refer the text also, right? Because this is a little bit confusing initially. So you can refer the text. Yeah. So to get into those details, say like what are five knowledge acquiring senses and all those things, right? So at times we'll have to go through the pages once and twice until we get these things. Yeah. So even so, there is no problem in referring back to the book. Yeah. So because these things are a little bit technical, right? So we'll have to go through this books. Yeah. We'll have to refer Prabhupada's purports then and there. Yeah. So indicates the central theme of the purport is it indicates that the field or body is non-permanent. Yeah. And material thing and Kshetrajna or knower of the field. Yeah. So basically these are five great elements. These are components. Yeah. Five objects, 11. Okay. Mind, ego, unmanifested stage. Okay. Stage of three modes called pradhana. Okay. And this pradhana is missing, is it? Okay. 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 So pradhana is the next one. Okay. The interaction of gross and subtle bodies. So gross bodies, desire, hatred, happiness, and distress. So this we know, right? Again, the soul's subtle body and the gross body, right? So we took the example of that coconut, right? So if you remember, right? So the gross body is nothing but the overall coconut which we have, right? And then so the inner shell is subtle body, and then the water is called the soul. Yeah. So you'll have to remember in that way. So pradhana is five great elements. Yeah. A representation of all ego, technically called materialistic concept. Okay. Intelligence, ignorance, which refers to mode, authorities. Basis of this knowledge is 13.5, and then this is the body actually goes into six vikaras. So it is nothing but we know, right? It takes birth, grows, stays, it has byproducts, decays, and dies. Yeah. So this is about what the body constitutes. And next, right, the Lord gives us the knowledge. Yeah. So now He gives us the qualities. Yeah. And so these are 20 qualities. Okay. So wherein the qualities are being discussed here. Okay. So in these cultivation of these qualities, right, will help us in acquiring the knowledge. So this is the actual knowledge. The law in this Prabhupada says that anything apart from this, right, is um, say in his language, it's it's not knowledge. Yeah. So it's ignorance. Okay. So these are all the qualities. So you'll find. Yeah. So who has a jnana, right? So he'll be having all this cultivation of these qualities is the real method for acquiring the knowledge. Okay. So in this, right, the different things has been discussed, right? So if you see, right, see, he gives a list of things like humility, yeah, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, yeah, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, yeah, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and rest, even mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and beside this, whatever there is ignorance. So that is what is being told. Okay. And there is a chart also, so wherein so we'll cover. So these are all the qualities, yeah, so which are required. Okay. So once we know this process of knowledge, right? So if we have unalloyed devotion, right, to the Lord, right? So all these qualities, if you see them, right, so you'll find them all in that person. Okay. So the essential quality here is we should have a spiritual master. Okay. So because unless we have a spiritual master, right, so this devotional service we can't move ahead. Yeah. And we'll actually look into the qualities, yeah, one by one. So wherein humility, so he's not to be anxious, okay, to have the satisfaction of being honored and dishonored. So he's not honored or dishonored. Okay. So that's one thing. Yeah, because he's not on the material conception, right? So he's not eager to receive any honor or dishonor from others. Okay. So, and Prabhupada writes, the actual advancement in spiritual science is one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items. So he doesn't look at the bodily conception, right? And pridelessness is not to be anxious to be famous, right? So they are not concerned to be famous, okay, of one religion, yeah, or entering into a group, yeah, and not following the principles, yeah. And here the one of the important thing is about non-violence, okay, so which is written. So I'm just reading from the book, okay, Bhagavad Gita. So non-violence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body. So for us, right, so we usually think that non-violence is what? Killing of animals or destroying something, right? But actually, non-violence means not to put others into distress. Okay. So that is the actual meaning of non-violence in this case. Yeah. So, and further explanation is people in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life. Okay. So, in general, so all of us are trapped in the ignorance of material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. Okay. So, unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, so one is practicing violence. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. Okay. So, this is something which I wanted to quote from the book because Usually non-violence has got a different meaning, right? So always we think that okay, it is harming people or so, right? So it is not, or killing something, right? So but it has got a different meaning. Okay, so that's the reason I wanted to touch base. Yeah, so tolerance is nothing but is ready to bear insult, right? Honor and dishonor, right? Say, and simplicity, so they are straightforward, they don't have diplomacy. Okay, so thinking one thing in the mind and then speaking something else, they don't have. And then if something is right, say they don't bend. Okay, say for the doing some diplomacy or to bend the rules, right? So those things will not happen. So even if they have to tell the truth, right, they'll tell, right? Even say when Prabhupada went to the West, so people said that the four regulative principles which you are saying, it's very difficult because they were quite opposite to the Westerners, right? And then they said that it's not possible for them to follow. So hey, you'll have to bend them. So either you'll have to give relaxation in one or two, but he never agreed for it. Eh? So there is no compromise in those things. And then approaching a spiritual master, right? So we spoke. So wherein we had that verse also, right? Tadividhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Yeah? So that is the way how we can actually accept a spiritual master, wherein he actually gives us the knowledge because he has seen that. Yeah. And cleanliness, yesterday we touched, so I'll not touch more much on that. And then steadiness. So he is determined because he knows what should be the goal. Yeah. And self control, so rejects any unfavorable thing. So he only accepts things which are favorable to Krishna and to actually develop in the spiritual advancement. Yeah. And then senses are controlled, right? So he only uses his senses for whatever is required, right? So he doesn't actually use his senses for unwanted things. Yeah. And so next thing is false ego. So he doesn't have this feeling of I'm the body, right? So all those things, I, me, mine, is not there. Okay. And detachment. So he's ready to give up which things which are not conducive in for Krishna consciousness. Okay. And then the other thing is no entanglement with the wife and children. So this we should not take in a wrong way. Okay. So here it has been said that we should actually tune our family in such a way that, or we should make our home in such a way that everyone, right? So the wife, children, everyone is engaged in Krishna consciousness, doing one thing or the other. Say some may pluck the flowers, yeah, and then all can sit and do puja, and then they can do kirtans, yeah. So like someone can go and buy vegetables, yeah, and then someone can cook prasadam, right? And then all can sit together, chant, eat prasadam, yeah, do all the festives, call others, yeah, invite others, and then do. So in case there are few cases, right, so where all these things may not happen, right? So in those cases, so after a stage, right, say, so when your responsibilities are over, right? So then you can actually renounce the family connection. So, but that doesn't mean that so no entanglement. Doesn't mean that we leave everything abruptly. Okay, and so yeah, aspiring to live in a solitary place. So not desiring. So it's basically like not desiring to mix with the materialistic men, right? So that's the one. And so same thing. So the detachment of general masses is nothing but to live with the devotees, and then basically to spend time with the like-mindedness people, yeah, and then accepting the importance of self-realization. So they actually stop you going all these materialistic activities, right? Like social activities, social gatherings, or going to cinemas and all those things, right? They actually stop that. Instead, they use that time for Lord service, right? So going to the temple, bhajan. So stopping this doesn't mean that say we are aloof, yeah. So it's not that we are going into a jungle. So we'll use that time in a different way. So whatever time you're using, we were using for an entertainment, right? So it will be changed in the spiritual entertainment. That's it. Yeah. And so rejection of useless research, yeah. So philosophical research for the truth. So they'll not actually go into the research of so many things, right? So they'll not get into those details, the unwanted research and all, right? So they'll not be interested. Okay. So this is the list of items, yeah, uh, which we have covered, yeah, and this is a small section. Okay, anyhow, we'll see through if we can cover one or two more shlokas and then we'll stop for today. I know there's a lot of dump today with technical details, but yes, we'll cover one or two more shlokas and wind up today. So this process of knowledge, yeah. So cultivation of qualities. So this is the real method of acquiring knowledge. Anything beyond is speculative. So this is what we have understood from 3.8 to 12. Yeah. So here in so now we'll go to the next section, which is nothing but the object of knowledge. Yeah? The soul can know the super soul, who is the object of knowledge and exists who exists everywhere and pervades everything. The super soul has transcendental senses, and he is the source of all our senses. Okay, he is unattached and he maintains all living entities. This is about the super soul. Okay, yeah. So I think we have covered this, but we'll actually see one or two slokas more, and rest we'll cover in the next class. So the object of knowledge is nothing but Gniya, right? Soul and super soul. Okay. And now the Lord says that now in 13.13, right? The Lord says that I'll start explaining. Okay. The knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal Brahman, the spirit beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Okay. So now he goes into the living entities as knowable, right? And he'll give the different, the super soul, right? Reference also he'll give us, wherein he'll inform us in the next verses, right? The super soul is present. He has multiple hands and legs and all, right? So we'll get to know that. Yeah. So Gnayam is nothing but the knowable is soul, and super soul are the real objects to be known. Okay. So this is knowable. Okay. Yeah. So this is everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists. Okay. So this is about the super soul. So in the sense that he's present in every living entity, right? So in every soul. So that's what it has been meant. Okay. This is basically to refute that most of the concepts are there saying that the soul and super soul is same, right? So which is being clarified in this verse saying that it is not. Okay. The super soul is all pervading. Okay. The super soul has hands, legs, ears, heads, and faces everywhere. So super soul is all pervading. Analogy is nothing but the sun, right? So if you look the sun, right, the sun doesn't change. So the sun is always there, right? So if we look and when it's in the morning for us, right? So when sun comes, it's morning for us, right? But in the night, the sun is present in a different location. That's it, right? So in another pole or so far from the equator, you'll find the sun, right? So in him exist all unlimited individuals, yeah. So living entities. So super soul is there from small ant to Brahma. So that's the reason he has his presence everywhere. So here the refute, right? So wherein so all these things the soul cannot have. That's what Prabhupada has strongly confirmed in this verse, yeah, that the super soul is not a living entity. Okay, individual soul cannot claim that he has legs, hands, etc. everywhere. Okay, and to think this is the effect of ignorance. If one thinks that under ignorance one is not conscious that his legs and hands are diffused everywhere, but when he attains to proper knowledge, he attains to that stage. His thinking is contradictory. So this is all refutation. So basically saying that we are not, the soul and super soul are not same. Yeah. If living entity has become conditioned by material nature, then how can he be supreme? So he's asking. So if the soul is conditioned, right? If the body has got toothache, if somebody says he's a god, right, and then he says he has toothache and all those things, right? So it's just an example. So I'm just giving in. So usually, if he's a god, right, he shouldn't have all those things. Individual soul cannot extend his hands and legs, right? So we can't do that. Only supreme soul can extend. Okay. So this is an important thing. So which actually Prabhupada actually writes this to actually defeat the Mayavadis here. I think we'll stop here. So rest we can cover because the initial portion, right, about these technicalities takes some time. Post that uh, next onwards, next chapter onward, next text onwards, right? So as we have some fundamentals, right? So the base, so it will be easy for us to move ahead. Yeah. Okay. So there is something somebody wants. Hare Krishna. I saw someone raising a hand, but I was because I wanted to continue, so I just continued it. Okay, is there anything in the chat? No, no, ether is different, Prabhu. So, Pankaj Prabhu, so ether is space, right? So ether is not soul, Prabhu. Ether is space, basically. Okay, to answer your question. And anyone has any other doubts in today's topic? I don't recollect. Somebody had raised a hand, but it went through by the time I saw. So, any questions from anyone? Okay, if not, right, so I would request you all go through this chapter. Yeah. So, initial, at least these verses, right, until 8, right? So, at least the first 8 what you'll have all 12. So if you go through them, right, because Prabhupada has put a lot of effort basic in writing the purports, right. It has got a lot of details. So if you read through that, right, so it will be easy in the next class, right. And even this section, right, so which I covered, I actually covered one or two things, the important ones, right. So rest all things, right? So for every quality, right? So Prabhupada has written very good explanation. Yeah. So for everything he has written very nicely. So he has written, I think, some 6-7 pages per part for 8 to 12 verses itself. Yeah. So you'll have to read through that. Yeah. Okay. Hope you all have marked your attendance. Yeah. Okay. We'll wind up the class. Am I audible or?
Yes, Prabhu, you are.
Okay. So possibly today's session was very heavy then. Okay. Okay. So we'll wind up the class for today. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.